All right, so for the next part of the lesson, we're now going to do the piecewise defined functions backwards. So this time we're given the graph and we need to write the equations, including the restrictions. So when I'm looking at this, I'm just going to start with the piece that's furthest to the left. So that's going to be this line right here. So we just need to work on writing the equation to this line. So as I'm looking at this, I can figure out my slope. So my slope, remember slope is done left to right. So from this point we're going up 2 over 1. So slope is 2. And then we want to see if we can figure out our y-intercept. So our y-intercept is at 1, 2, 3. So that's our b value. So that means that we can write our equation in the y equals mx plus b form. So for the first part of my equation, we're going to have 2x plus 3. And then our restriction would be if x. And then we need the x value of that endpoint. So here's our endpoint. So that is on 1. And then because our graph is going left, we need less than. And we don't want to put equal to because we have that open circle. Okay. So that's our first equation. So now we want to go to our middle one and figure that one out. So again, I would just start by the slope. So for this one, we're going down 1 over 1. So that means the slope for this would have to be -1. And then if we actually do our slope backwards, we should be able to figure out our y-intercept. So if I go up 1, left 1, here's my point, which is going to be at 2 on the y-axis. So that means our b value has to be 2. So again, if we just substitute this into our general equation, we would have -x plus 2 if, and again, we need the x values of our endpoints. So this time we have 2 endpoints, so we just want both of those x values. So the first one is at 1, the second one is at 2. So that means that we're going to have the x's between 1 and 2. And we want less than or equal to signs because they're closed circles. And then we have one more piece to our graph, so we need that third equation. So as I'm looking at this, it's a horizontal line, so that means that our slope has to be 0. And then I want to kind of trace this back to my y-axis, so if I do that, we're going to be right at this point, which is at 1, 2, 3. So our b value is 3. So since our slope is 0, we're not even going to write it. So our equation for this would be just 3. And then if, we want the x value of the endpoint. So here's our endpoint. We're at 1, 2, 3 for that. And then since it's going to the right, we would want greater than. And we don't want a bar underneath because it's an open circle. So now we're just going to put a curly bracket around all of this to indicate that it is a piecewise function. And then we would just give it a name. So whatever name you want to give it. Alright, so if we try another one, so here's the next problem. So again, I'm just going to start with the one furthest on the left, and we're going to figure out our slope and the y-intercept. So here, our slope is, and again, we want to do this from left to right. We're going down 1 over 1, 2, 3. So that means the slope for this one is going to be -1/3. So if I continue that, hopefully I can find my way back to my y-axis. So down 1, 1, 2, 3. So we would be right about there. So that means our b value for this one is going to be -2. So again, I'm going to use my y equals mx plus b equation to write my answer. So our first equation is going to be at -1/3 x minus 2 if, and then we have one endpoint, so it's going to be x. And then our endpoint is at -3. And since it's going to the left, we want less than or equal to because of that closed circle and the fact that it's going left. All right, so now we're going to do the middle piece. So again, it's a horizontal line, so that means our slope has to be 0. And then our b value is at 2. So again, since m is 0, we're not even going to write it. So our equation is just 2 if. And then here we have 2 endpoints, so it's going to be in between those 2 x values. So we just want to figure those out. So 1 is at 1, 2, 3, so -3 and +1. So x has to be in between -3 and +1. And we don't want the bars because they're open circles. And the last one, so again, if we just figure out what our slope is, so from here we're going up 1, 2, 3 over 1, so that means slope has to be 3. And then our b value for that one, so if we do our slope backwards, we would go down 1, 2, 3, left 1, so we're going to be at the origin, so that means our b is 0. So we're not going to write b this time. So our equation would be just 3x if, and then we have one endpoint, so it's going to be x and then some number. So our x value at this endpoint is 1. And then since it's going to the right, we want greater than. And because it's a closed circle, we're going to have our bar underneath. And then our last step is just to put these all in a curly bracket, one big curly bracket. And then we're going to name our function. So I'll call this one g of x this time. G of x equals. All right, last one. So again, if we just start with our equation on the left, we want to start with slope. So it looks like from our endpoint, we are going to go up 2 over 1. So that means our slope is 2. And if we continue that, so up 2 over 1, we'd end up here. So our b value is going to be -1. So our first equation, we're going to have 2x minus 1 if, and then we have that one endpoint at -1. So x -1. And then since it's going left, it has to be less than. All right, next one. So again, we're just going to find our slope. So it looks like we are going down 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we have -4 over 4, that's going to reduce to -1 for our slope. And it's going through the origin for our y-intercept, so that means b is 0. So we don't even have to write the b for our equation. We have 2 endpoints, so that means that our x value, our restriction, has to be an and statement. So equation is -x if, and then we're going to have one less than or equal to sign and one less than sign because we have a closed circle and an open circle. And then our x value at this point is -1. The x value at the other endpoint is 3. All right, last equation. Again, we're going to just start by finding slope. So we're going down 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1, 2, 3, 4. So our slope is going to be -1 again when we reduce that. So now if we kind of do our slope backwards, so up 1, left 1, up 1, left 1, up 1, left 1, we want to find that y-intercept. So that's going to be at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So our equation is going to be -x plus 7 if, then we have one endpoint, so we're going to have an x and a number. And since it's going to the right, it has to be greater than, and our closed circle would be equal to. And then our x value looks like it's going to be at 1, 2, 3. So again, we're just going to put all of that into a curly bracket, and we're going to name our function. So this time I will use h of x. So h of x equals.